Welcome back to the Joseph Graham Show. Today I'm pretty excited. I have David. Oh, I didn't ask you that I normally do. How do I say your last name so I don't butcher it?
Nagel like bagel.
Nagel like bagel. And we actually met through a podcast group that I'm involved in and David is in as well. But this is kind of like the first time we've talked, met each other. I know you're like an award-winning speaker. You have written books. You've done a bunch of different stuff. But David, in your own terms, tell people who you are, what you do, and who you help.
Okay, so like you said, my name is David Nagel. I am the owner and president of Life Is Now Inc. It's a global coaching and consulting company. We work with entrepreneurs primarily and salespeople. Um, and the idea was that there were things that I learned out of making tremendous mistakes in my life, and it allowed me to have success very rapidly, blew my mind. So I decided I was going to study and learn what it is that these changes that I made, how did I have this success out of seemingly nowhere? And during that process, it was a study for about 7 years. I started helping people on the side, and they started having tremendous success. And so then in 1999, I started the company. I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
So, how do you help people?
So primarily, the idea is it's shifting mindset around what we call universal laws or principles that I witnessed being ignorant of in my own youth, right? So I was a high school dropout at 17. I got married very young, had two kids, but no skills, no education. And we ended up like car was repossessed. We went bankrupt. We had to like just leave in the middle of the night out of the apartment that we were living in because they wouldn't let us out of the lease. We had to like run away. We were in a bad neighborhood. We were on food stamps, and I couldn't get a job other than driving a forklift in a warehouse. So I woke up to the idea that, okay, I screwed up. I need to go back to school in order to get an education, to get a skill so I could take care of my family because I felt terrible about who I was as a person. So for 2 years, I was focused on how can I make more money. I was working 6.5 days a week with all the overtime that they would give me, and I was not getting ahead. We were getting further behind. Um, so for 2 years, I'm trying to figure out how can I make more money. I'm trying to do deals on the side. I bought an old snow plow and hooked it up to my truck because I lived in Chicago at the time.
Hmm.
I'm like, I'll plow snow in the wintertime because it would pay more than overtime, right? So it was like, and then it didn't snow for 2 years, like barely any snow. So nothing was working, and my attitude about life in general was getting worse by the day. I didn't like what I did. I hated my work. I didn't respect authority at all. I was very immature, to the point where I would scream at my authorities, where I worked, right? If they reprimanded me or whatever, I'd lose it, go fly off the handle. Anyway, 2 years into this complete mess that I created, I had probably the worst day I ever had. I was exhausted. It was February in Chicago. It was like 20 below zero. Dock's not heated. I'm very, very tired. I get into work before I punch in. I get reprimanded twice. I get written up twice because my work was so shoddy. Like pallets of food were falling over in trailers because I wasn't blocking them correctly, and all that. And I just lost it at the boss again for I don't know how many times, and I'm screaming at this guy. I walk out of the office, I slam the door, I go to work. The other guy that's supposed to help me on the dock's not there that night. By the way, I was working for the largest food importer in the United States.
Hmm.
And as the night is progressing, I'm on top of being angry, I'm trying to hurry because everybody in the warehouse is trying to stack pallets with food for deliveries for the next day. It's my job to put them in the trucks in the order that they come off. And I'm just flying around and stuff's falling over. And then I got to stop and stop the whole line, the assembly line in the warehouse. It was a mess. At about 2 o'clock in the morning, I was pulling into the trailer, a big pallet of food, and it just tipped over. And
Oh.
I just started crying. I lost it. It had a total
Hmm.
emotional
Yep.
breakdown in this trailer. And I'm sitting there sobbing like an ugly cry. And I go, God, please show me what to do. I am so stuck. I don't know.
Hmm.
I have no idea what to do. And his voice in my head, as clear as we're sitting here together, said, David, change your attitude. Didn't say anything else. It was so loud. I turned around on the forklift to look like, is there somebody here? So I got my composure. I fixed the mess. And I was going back to work the whole time thinking about this change your attitude. What does this mean? What is this? I've been hearing this my whole life because they would call my dad into school because I was a terrible student. And they would say, David's a pretty bright guy, but his attitude's terrible. If he would change his attitude, he probably would do better. And I would go home and get grounded. Instead of anybody teaching me how to change my attitude or addressing whatever the issue was that I had at the time, it was go to your room
Hmm.
and study till your next report card. You have no privileges whatsoever.
Mm.
I could come out for dinner. I'd have to spend the whole weekend in there. And I did that for years. So I thought, okay, I don't know what his attitude thing is. And it occurred to me to look at the guy that owned the company that I worked for, primarily because his success story, I could relate to it for the simple reason that he started the company in his garage and he became the largest food importer in the United States. And it was in a suburb of Chicago.
Hmm.
So I thought, what's the difference between him and me? And that night, while I'm on the forklift, I came up with three things. He must have loved what he did because from going from his garage to this enormous company is astounding. He must have really done good work. And I was not doing good work. I was really working to go home. I didn't want to be there. I didn't
Hmm.
care, that whole thing. And there was something about him that caught my eye that kind of went against the paradigm that I was raised with. So I was raised in Chicago. I came from a working class family, lots of union jobs, lots of negativity around the people that ran those companies,
Hmm.
right? They don't
Yep.
care about you. You're just a number. Don't do anything more than you're paid for. So I grew up with an attitude around working before I ever worked. So like I went in with this chip on my shoulder, like, you're nothing and you're going to abuse me and all this stuff. And I said, okay, I'm going to change those things inside of myself for a year and see if it could make any difference whatsoever. And this other voice in my head's going, dude, there's no way by changing your attitude, you're going to increase your income. And I'm like arguing with myself while I'm
Hmm.
working. I'm like, nope, I'm going to try it. That voice, I don't know what that voice was, but that's the only clarity that I have. So I, so I said tomorrow morning or tomorrow night because I work nights, I am going to act like I love what I do. I am going to do every job to the best of my ability, which I did not know what that was because nobody ever made me do that as a kid. And I was going to treat everybody with total respect.
Hmm.
So I got done that night. I went home. I had a 56-mile drive home. I'm doing nothing but thinking about this. Next day, I get up and I'm going to work. I'm like, no, I am going to do this. And I did. And 30 days later, my income tripled. It went
Hmm.
from 20,000 a year to the equivalent of 62,500 a year. And I'm sitting there going, how is this even possible?
Hmm.
I didn't understand what changed that allowed this to happen, especially the circumstances in which it's changed, which was basically this. There was a guy by the name of Drew Batty. He lived in Whiting, Indiana. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he would come to our terminal and he drove a fuel truck. They did what's known as on site fueling. So we had trailers that were refrigerated and heated depending on the weather in Chicago. They took diesel fuel. Plus, we had tractors, trucks, right? They
Hmm.
took diesel
Yep.
fuel. My job Tuesday and Thursday was to hand him a list of everything that was going out for those 2, 3 days, and he had to go fill them and make sure that they were full. Well, Drew was a great guy. I had no problem with him. But I was always taking people and lowering them below myself to feel better about myself. I didn't know I was doing that either. But that week that I made this change, he said to me, when are you going to get out of here? Because I was always saying, hey, if you know of any truck driving jobs, I
Hmm.
have a license, but I don't have any experience. But it would be a way up if I could find something. And he said to me, he said, when are you going to get out of here? And I said, as soon as I can find a different job. I said, but I can't find anything. I said, most trucking companies want 5 years of experience, but nobody will give you the time to get 5 years of experience. Big catch 22. It
Hmm.
really was a lot of nepotism, a lot of union patting guys on the back. If I know you, I can get you in type
Yeah.
of a thing.
Yep.
And he says to me, we're hiring. Why don't you come to work for us? And I immediately turned into the biggest asshole, if I could say that,
Hmm.
you
You can
ever met.
feel free.
And I'm like, dude, I said, look, first of all, let me tell you something. Why would I want to? You're driving a bomb. You carry gasoline and diesel fuel. I go, has anybody ever died driving one of these things? He goes, yeah, last year a guy flipped one on I-65 and burned to death. I'm like, there you go. Why would I want to do this as a job? Right. So that was just one thing. And then I'm going over, you're outside, I'm inside, you're in
Hmm.
the cold, you're in the heat, you're in there out there in the yard with the mosquitoes, or when it's 20 below or it's raining. And I said, and you always smell like diesel fuel. I said, it stinks to high heaven. And I said, however, the big thing is, how much could you possibly be make doing this? And he stood back and he looked at me. He goes, well, last year I made 50. I go, get out of here. There's no way. There's no
Hmm.
way you made 50. He said, I'm coming next Tuesday, whatever it was. I'll bring you a copy of my check stub. He said, I'm
Hmm.
telling you I did. And I'm also telling you that we've got a spot open right now, and I could get you in there if you want it. So the
Yeah.
next week, he brings me the stub, and sure enough, the guy made 50 grand.
Hmm.
Now I'm scratching to get to 20, and he made 50. So I'm running through all of this in my head. I said to him, tell me what the downside is, other than all the stuff that I judged you for. Tell me what the downside is. He said, the downside is that we're going into the season where people get laid off because of weather. He said, a large portion of what we do is construction contractor work. He says, when the ground freezes, they stop working, we stop working. He said, so about 20% of the bottom seniority gets laid off. I said, for how long? He said, depends on the weather in Chicago. He's like,
Hmm.
it could be 3 months, it could be 6 months. You never know. He said, or we could get busy doing something else, which is why we have this position open right now. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we just landed this contract with Union Pacific Railroad to do this emergency fuel. He goes, so we need guys.
Hmm.
So I said, I went home, talked to my wife. I said, you know what? I can get a job anywhere driving a forklift. That I know. I don't know if this is going to be a smart move or it's going to be stupid. I asked other people in my family. They told me it was a dumb move. And so they said, my uncle says to me, he goes, I said, you know this company? Because he was in the trucking business also. He goes, oh yeah, we see him around. We've used him a few times. He said, uh, let me ask you a question. I said, what's that? He goes, how much overtime do you get where you are? I said, all I want. He said, I've always had the philosophy, stay where they give you the overtime, right? And this company is going to pay me 3 times what I'm paying. And
Yeah.
I'm going to get overtime, which is time and a half.
Hmm.
So I said, you know something? Something inside of me is saying, do this.
Yep.
I did it, and my life began to change. I got I was really stuck on the idea that this opportunity had been around me for 2 years and I never saw it as an opportunity. So I got like Tony Robbins personal power tapes. I started getting biographies on cassette tape, everything. I got rid of the music in my car. I had to drive 100 miles one way to work for this company. So it was a long drive every day to and from. And I just started studying everything I could get my hand on, books on tape.
Hmm.
And slowly but surely, the pieces started to come together. I started to behave differently. At this company that I went to work for, I started as a truck driver. It was owned by a large Irish family, a lot of kids. So they were all involved in the business, but they had never promoted somebody from truck driver into management. 3 years driving a truck, I was promoted into management, first person, and I worked my way through the company. And when I left, At the end of 7 years, I was in charge of expanding the company across the country, and I
Hmm.
never went back to school, not
Yeah.
even to spend a
Yeah.
day at school. I became self-taught, and I learned how to fix my attitude and my belief system. I learned how to sell, and I was like, I can make something of myself, and that's what I did. So that's why I started the company because I'm passionate about helping people change
Hmm.
from the inside out and get the results that they want.
Yeah. No, I love that. There's a few things that just like popped out at me. One, your upbringing will influence how you grow, but you have the ability to change it if you're willing to go against the norms. A lot of times I talk in this podcast challenging the beliefs you've been brought up with because are they your beliefs or did you inherit them? You also had what I would call the come to Jesus or pivotal
Yeah.
point in your life moment to where you could have went one way or the other. You could have stayed being grumpy in the warehouse. You're making 20K. Maybe you would have gotten up to 30K if you would have just listened to all the people around you that didn't have a clue. There's another
Right.
lesson. Don't listen to the cheap seats or the ones that are in the same spot you are. They can't show you the way out. And then three, it took longer than probably what you wanted it to do, but over those 7 years, you developed into who you are now, David, or began to because you were studying, leveling up, reading, doing the stuff to where you were able to launch and become the person you wanted to be. 7 years before that, you wouldn't have even thought about that because you didn't even have that dream or vision in your heart until you finally heard that voice and made the move. I just wanted to recap that from what I was hearing because I'm just like sitting here going, there's certain times in your life, certain keys that happen that if you don't act, your life can go one way or the other, and you made the right choice. So I love that, man.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting what you say about I didn't want the same things. When I started studying, I don't remember what I was studying at the time, but somebody said, it might have been Robbins, write down 100 goals that you want, right? And I had a card, it was just a little like 3x5 card that I had make notes on at work when I was driving the forklift. And I wrote down three things that I wanted. The number one thing was a house in a nice neighborhood for my family. The second thing was a dream. If I ever have enough money, I want my own fishing boat because I grew up going to Wisconsin all summer long, fishing, hunting, that type of thing. And
Hmm.
we never had enough money for a boat. So I wanted my own boat. And then I thought at some point I would love to probably retire in Wisconsin, like get some land or something. That was
Hmm.
all I knew that I wanted. If you and I when I heard Robin say, write down 100 goals, I'm thinking, you got to be crazy. Like I can't imagine.
Yep.
So you're
Yep.
100% correct with what you're saying. They weren't my beliefs. They were the beliefs that I grew up with, but it was like putting the handcuffs on your mind
Hmm.
um, to
Oh,
get
I
out.
had the same situation. I grew up in West Michigan. So I grew up in that same union type of environment. I grew up in the country, so I was on the wrong side of the tracks. Poor kid, didn't have the best upbringing. Like my parents tried, but like it was rough. And then
Yeah.
having to make those shifts and those pivots, it's hard, but once you do, now those three dreams you've probably conquered multiple times, and you're like, dude, I can go buy a boat anywhere I want. I can go do what I want. And now you've gone from goals for you to goals for other people to goals for legacy. That's my guess if I'm
Yep.
tracking with you, but I'll let
Yep.
you tell your story and I'm not just jumping ahead.
Yeah. No, that's 100% correct. And I met a guy named Bob Proctor in 1996 who became my mentor. And we worked together for about 7 years. We had a company together. He was like my best friend. It was an amazing relate. I would not be who I am today without that man in my life. And he taught me, one of the first things he taught me was that making more money was easier. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. He's no, David, I'm telling you, making money, the more you make, the easier it is. So when I started the company, I had a goal every month, right from the very first month. I had an agreement with my wife, and the agreement was I had to make $5,000 a month in order to pay our bills.
Mhm.
We didn't want to go backwards, right? No room for going back, being bankrupt again. And I totally agreed. She said, if you can't make 5,000 a month, then there's no purpose for you being in business because you're not here to fail. You're here
Yep.
to win. And she was 100% correct. So I'm making 5,000 a month. And he said, what do you want? I said, I'd love to make 50,000 a month. And he said, well, why don't you do it this month? And I'm like, I can't, how am I going to do it this month? He said, I'm telling you, it's easier to make 50,000 a month than it is 50,000 a year, which is about the equivalent of what I was, where I was.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay. So I set a goal for that month. At the end of the month, I was no closer to that money. As a matter of fact, I think I was further behind. And he laughed at me at the end of the month. He said, how'd you do? I'm like, terrible. I'm like, I didn't make any progress at all. He said, well, do it again. He said, I'm
Hmm.
telling you, it's easier. And I said, yeah, I hear that. I said, I know it's easier for you. I said, but I'm not having that experience. He said, let me ask you a question. Why would you work all year for 50,000 when you could do it in a month? And I'm like, I wouldn't. I want to do it in a
Yeah,
month,
yeah.
right? He was a man that did not, he would lead you to how to change your mind, but he would not tell you exactly how to do it.
Hmm.
So, second month, I go after it. Same thing, flat out wrong. Get on the phone with him again, and he goes, I told you it was easier. And when he said it that time, it was as if a bell went off in my mind, and I go, oh, he really means it is easier. Like it's actually easier. So I said, all right, give me another month. So I'm on the third month. I get off the phone with him. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I sit down and I go, if this was as easy as it possibly could be, what would that look like? And
Hmm.
I thought, well, I'd have one client for 50,000. That would be
Easy.
completely easy. And I thought, well, I can't do that. I can't charge 50,000. But what I could do was I could raise my prices to 15,000 because I didn't know my worth at the time.
Hmm.
So I
Yep.
raised it to 15,000. I hit the 50 in 2 weeks and I was like, I got it. I
Hmm.
totally got it. Took it over 1 million shortly after that and it's continued to grow ever since. And it was like, I cannot, I actually, part of me, Joe, I was a bit angry. I'm like, how is it that it's this easy to make money and people don't know this?
Hmm.
Right? Mike, like, I didn't know anybody that knew this. Now, I've really matured around that idea over the years, right? Because that's 26 years ago. However, the truth is the truth. It is actually easier. Now, you got to grow yourself. You have to
Hmm.
understand your worth. You may have to learn a few skill sets. But I was like, I want to help people do this. So that was became the foundation of my business that I could help business owners make a lot of money fast. And I got known for that in the early days. So I got a ton of business coming my way. And if the person was serious and they would do what I would say, they would jack their income up really, really quick. So from there, the business just expanded. Like I expanded my skill sets. I hired people that were really good at marketing and team building, and they knew how to teach those things. So we became more well-rounded over the years in what we were doing. But now we weren't just a one-stop shop for making more money, but I love sales. I'm passionate about sales. I teach people how to sell in their business, and um, that's real. That like the growth that's come from that's been extraordinary because in the beginning it was about what could I get out of it, and then it became what can I really do for other people. Once it was like I'm not worried about not getting the things that I want anymore out of life. I can buy whatever I
Hmm.
want. So that changed the whole dynamic. It was like, how can I help other people, all over the world, do this? What can I do for them? So that's where it's at.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it's the progression of most entrepreneurs I deal with because I do sales coaching as well. I've been in the sales game for years. Like that's my jam. And most people don't know their worth and most people don't know their value. But the other thing that Bob probably didn't tell you is if a client's paying you 50,000, they're a lot easier to deal with than the client paying you 500 bucks
Right. That's right.
because they already know how to invest in themselves and what they're doing and how they're doing. Like I've told this story before, but it's kind of funny. I made what was it like $25,000 in a 7 minute conversation because the guy I was dealing with when I was selling oil and gas just wanted to see if I would pick up the phone the day after Thanksgiving if I was really serious about it. And I did. And I called him and said, hey, you said to call you at this time. He goes, cool. I want 2.5 points. I've already looked at it. And that was a $250,000 investment. I'm like, you don't need to go. He goes, no, I looked at the one I invested in. I just want to see if you really believed in it enough to do this. It's always those simple moments of clarity where you're like, oh, it's not about me. And what's valuable to someone else, it's different than what's valuable to me. I don't care about fast cars. I just was at a client's place and they have a McLaren. That's great for them. I could care less. It's not my thing. But you tell me I
Yeah.
want to go to like Europe or go on a big trip and drop 10, 20K. I'm all over it because it's what's valuable to you. So I love that aspect of it. So let's dig in a little bit deeper though. So how do you help? Because we talked a lot about super high level mindset. Do you just help them with their mindset shifts like Bob helped you? Or how do you help people develop and grow into who they want to be?
No, I don't do it the way Bob did with me because if Bob didn't do this with everybody, but the way that he did it with me, I was always fighting the idea of like this guy wants me to quit. He was trying to find the place and the weakness in me where I would quit, and I wasn't going to quit. But what I do with other people was I was coming from the place I discovered the law of polarity. And when I discovered that law, it changed everything for me because I was raised with the idea, what if something goes wrong? Right. And like my mother was big on this. And I would say, because I was, whatever I wanted to do, she would always say no. And she would say, what if something goes wrong? And I would be like, well, like what? And I don't know. She would get angry. I don't know. Like anything could go wrong. What are you going to do? I'm like, well, tell me what it is and I'll tell you what I would do.
Hmm.
And then she would just get more angry. And then my father would say, not everybody can win. You better hold on to your money because there'll be a time when you don't have any, like all this negative stuff. So I started studying the laws of the universe, and one of them is the law of polarity. And the law of polarity states that everything physical and non-physical in the universe has an equal and opposite side to it,
Hmm.
and they exist at the same time in the same place. And I started to put this to the test. And it was like, there's always a solution. The sale is always there. The money is always there. And I did that for a couple of years. And it was like the biggest breakthrough. It's like, it really is always here. It's like it's always there. So I started teaching that to people. And when I was coaching them, we would always get to the place where they wanted to stop and quit. And I would
Hmm.
say, go to the next step, like 3 feet from gold in Think
Yep,
and
yep.
Grow Rich. Go to the next step. You're right there on the edge. No, no, yeah, I've been doing go to the next step. Hold that idea in your mind. And they would always break through.
Hmm.
And the sale would be there, the money be there, the contract would be there, whatever it is. So I start with a person. I ask them what I believe is the most important question in a person's lifetime. What do you really want? And that usually stumps most people because most people are raised in an environment where you're told you can't have what you want.
Yep.
So they're choosing by what the world has said that they could choose from,
Hmm.
but they're not tapping into what their real heart is. So I work with them on that. And then once we get what they really want, the idea is then what do you need to learn and do in your business in order to turn it into that so that you can have that goal. I work with people. I have a group of entrepreneurs that I work with every morning for 15 to 20 minutes, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's called the Elite Mind Program. And my job is to help them get, a complete goal for what they want, then how you're going to create the system in order to manifest in your business, and then to keep them in the right mindset the entire time. And they just win and win and win and win. Now, somebody said to me the other day, do all of them win? I said, all the ones that stick with it win.
Hmm.
I said, if they quit, they don't win. And we do have some people that quit now and then,
Yep.
but not many. Because, like you said before, Bob did not tell me in the beginning, the more people spend, the more serious they were. I found that out on my own over time. But it also helped me determine who my ideal client was. You know, if a person's going to argue with me about price or what they're spending or any of that, like I don't have anything, like you're not for me, right?
Right.
I'm not for you
Yeah.
type of an idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because we think by the knowledge, the wisdom, all the different things that we were born with, But like you said, the money's already there. If they're talking to you about investing a $50,000 investment and they are qualified, you already have qualified them, you know that they actually can do this, they're going to spend it. They just need to know they can trust to spend it with you. That's the only shift. A sale is a sale, whether it's for $2, 200,000, $2 million, it doesn't matter. The sales process is the same, cost versus value. And then just helping them get their mindset set up to the point where it makes sense. Because you're right, once you get to a certain amount, money really doesn't matter. It's not like I can
Right.
only buy so many cars. I can only go on so many trips. I only want so many houses. I don't want to have 40 houses. That's a lot of work. It has nothing to do
Right.
with, like I don't want extra like what do you really want? I love that question you asked though, because I ask a lot of people this and they have no idea. What do you really want? And if they really looked in their heart, most of them would dream way bigger and go farther, but they're afraid to. So they say, oh, I want the nice house in the nice neighborhood like you did. And I'm sure your dreams since then have expanded way more.
Oh yeah, completely. I was like most people. I went out as soon as I made some money, went out and got all the things, right? I bought an Aston Martin and I moved into a gorgeous house in Rancho Santa Fe, California. And like I did all of that stuff. And then it was like one day it clicked in my mind. I didn't have to go out and get all those things because I could have them whenever I wanted, right? It was coming out of the fear of like, I'll never get this, I'll never
Yeah.
experience this. I was like you, I wanted to travel too, man. I wanted to go all over the world and go to Europe and France and, have all those experiences, which I've had over and over again. Um, but it's 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 really like I still think like I'm listening to you tell me your experience and I'm thinking to myself, it is such a wild thing to get to a place of consciousness where when we were kids it was like we were hanging on every last dollar. If you
Hmm.
couldn't get off, if mom couldn't cut out coupons on Sunday or whatever for shopping, and now we have a total different consciousness. And I think that it's really interesting that the world drives people into such fear and desperation for their life when the opposite side is true at the same time, you
Hmm.
know? And like my wish would be that everybody would wake up. Like what a wonderful world that it could actually be, because everything that bad happens stems from fear
Hmm.
of some kind. But yeah, I just absolutely love helping people and watch them win and then watch them go help other people.
Yeah. No, and I'm with you. Like that was the whole purpose of this. I don't need to coach to get money. I make enough money on my own. But I coach because I want to help people. And I know if they don't invest in themselves, they're not going to actually level up and become who they need to be.
Yeah.
Um, so let's do this first. I always do it more in the middle-ish. Where can people find you at? That way they don't just sneak off at the end and don't get a chance to connect.
Yeah. So the easiest way to find me is to go to the Elite Mind podcast. No, I'm sorry. The Successful Mind podcast. I'm mixing two different things there. The Successful Mind podcast. We've been doing since 2017. It doesn't cost you anything. There's no commitment. Listen at your own will. We cover every topic. We give you the best that we've got there. And if you want to know more, it'll be very easy for you to figure out how to contact us. We've got something called the Quantum Leap Code, which is like a free download a person can download. And the idea behind it is that it's a series of questions to kind of wake you up to what it is that you want, because everybody is sitting on the edge of a quantum leap. You just have to know what it is that you're looking for, right? So that's something that I created for people just to like be more inquisitive about what it is that they want. It took me a long time to get to, knowing what the dream was and all of that. I went through a lot of trouble with that and a lot of trouble within the people that I knew, friends and family, just
Hmm.
being extremely negative to the idea. My uncle said to me one time, he goes, he said, your father told me that you want to be a millionaire. Now, I never told that to my father. So I thought, well, that's an interesting thing to say. And he goes, I've been looking for the million my whole life and never found it. What makes you think you're going to find it? And he was trying to discourage me from going to a Tony Robbins seminar. This is in the early 90s. He's like,
Hmm.
they're just going to take your money. The only people that make money in those things is the people that are putting the seminar on. You're never going to get anything out of there. If it was that easy, everybody would do it.
Hmm.
Just craziness. Um, so I don't know where I was going with that, but the idea is that if we could just wake up to what's going on the inside and follow it, every
Mhm.
door that you need will open, like you were talking about
Yeah.
earlier. Every door that you need will open.
Well, but you have to change your proximity too. I've moved twice in my life. One away from West Michigan to Texas, where I had gotten a different job and gotten in a different mindset and different things. And then now I live here in Phoenix because I got recruited because the company threw enough money at me. I'm like, yeah, okay, I can do this. It's all setting up what life you want to wake up to. You can do it through corporate America if you want. You can do it as a business owner as you want. You can do it as starting your own thing, whatever you want to do, because the
Right.
rules are yours to set. The problem is that we're around these negative mind people all the time. And if you don't surround yourself with positive people, they're going to drag you down because you may not have the willpower to push through. I'm an oddball. Like you tell me no, I'm going to do it. You tell me I
Me too.
can't do something, I'm going after it. That's like the high achiever type of pattern. But I think it just comes down to one, get around the right people, get rid of the noise. So if you know your family, the people that you're close to, your friends, your bros, whatever, most of my friends and bros from school are still doing the same thing. They're working in the factory, they're working in the shop, they're doing their thing. Cool. They want to do that. That's great. For me, I'm like, I'd rather risk and fall on my face and fail and get closer to my goals than not do it at all. And
Right.
what I found is once I started putting the energy in, money follows energy. The universe, God follows energy. What you say, what you do, what you put in your head each and every day matters. Like I literally will make sure I fix what I consume as well, because if I'm listening to all that negative energy, I'm going to be negative. But if I'm listening to positive energy or positive people or people say, no, you can do it. And then the last thing I'll say is anyone that's made it farther than me has never discouraged me on going after my dreams. It's always been the cheap seats, as I call them, that don't want to do anything or had failed that are like, oh, you can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree with that. I know what I'm here to do and what I want. And I have a lot of people that go way further than I have. I got a couple of people that like in the hundreds of millions of dollars that and it was just by getting their head straight. They already had the business. It was just helping. I mean, I have no desire to go. I don't want to be a billionaire. Like I don't have any purpose. That's not my purpose, you know?
Right.
I make millions. I'm perfectly comfortable. I love what I do. I help other people. Um, and so here's another thing that I tell people. You were born to be a success, and success is easy. If you take those two things and you begin to understand it, the only place that something gets hard is in here, right?
Mhm.
Hard is a perception. It's not a reality. If I say it's going to be hard, it'll be hard. If I say it's going to be easy, it'll be as easy as I adjust my attitude to being, which really blew me away because I thought everything in life sucked.
Yeah. Well, but you had to have the paradigm shift. We
I
all
did.
do. Anyone that I know of, and like I said, when I was talking to you before, I've dropped over 240 episodes. I've recorded more, and I've been on a bunch of people's podcasts. There's a pattern with people that are successful, and one of those patterns is super tough childhood normally happens, and a paradigm shift that makes them be the, for lack of better terms, the chain breaker or whatever term you want to put in there for their family to establish who they are, what they should be and what's possible. And then the cool thing is I start seeing it in my kids now. Like my son's 19, he's an electrician already. Like he already knows what path he wants to do. He's already working toward it and he loves doing it. It's what he wants to do. And like by 27, he could have his master's
Yeah,
and have his own company. When he's 24, his goal is to start his own business because I think at 24 he'll have his journeyman because he started early. That's a set awesome plan. Will he be a multimillionaire? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on how big he grows the business. But if he's enjoying it and that's what he wants to do and he's passionate about it, that's success. I think we need to
absolutely.
change the paradigm there too. It's not only money. And don't get me wrong, I like making money, totally great with money, have no problems with it. But I need people to understand you can build a life you love. If you're making over 200,000 a year, you're doing better than 99% of the world.
Right,
So look at the levels you're at, find out, like you said, you could maybe become a billionaire if you want, but that's a lot of work. That's a lot of headache. That's a lot of extra effort. Making millions is fine. What do you want to
right.
do?
Yeah. I mean, at that point, it's just about giving money away at that point.
Mhm.
Like you can't live long enough to spend it, really. And one last thing. When I'm in large group events or I'm speaking someplace, I'll ask business owners, how many of you are in the 1% club? Meaning you're the first person in your family to become successful. And like 95% of the room raise their hands. So what you're saying is 100% true.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and it's because of the fact that entrepreneurs and sales professionals are the ones that change the world. We demand things to come into existence, more so entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
and pull them back into reality. I got that from Alex Sharpton. I never take credit for stuff that's not mine. Um, But I think that's just something we need to do. We need to be willing to go out there and build a life that we say we want for our families. That's why we're built this way. That's why, like, I do watch sports sometimes. I do fun stuff at times, but I'm more interested in learning about people, researching, growing, and becoming who I am. I know we're landing the plane, but is there anything, David, we haven't talked about that you wanted to bring up before we let our listeners go?
The only thing is that there was one thing that happened in my life prior to this breakthrough that I do believe had a significant difference in the change. And that was in September of 1989. I was in a water skiing accident and I got separated from the boat and sucked through a dam.
Ooh.
And I was only one of two people that ever lived going through there. And it caused me at 24 years old to really go, life can be very short. You have no idea how long you're going to be here because I was having a blast. 10 minutes later, I was fighting for my life. And I thought, I want to make something of myself. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know where that was going to go, but it did change that. It was a perception change. And I tell people, look, even if we live to be a ripe old age, life goes by pretty damn quick. There's no
Hmm.
question about it. Don't take it for granted, right? Do something while you actually can, because there will be a last time for everything.
Yeah, no, I love that. David, thank you for being on the show. And just what he said, go check out David's page, go check out my stuff. Find a way to start moving forward to what it is that you feel you're supposed to do, and then get around people that will encourage you with it, not discourage you. Until next time, go be legendary and have a great day.